Welcome back to a special edition of the BSD YouTube show. Penn State is in the playoff. Tim, I feel like it literally feels like we haven't talked in like 3 months, but it somehow has only been I think 3 weeks. When was the last time we talked? The Oregon preview show?
I believe so, yeah, and that
Yeah.
was that first week of December. But that was 2 weeks ago now because
Yeah.
obviously I was at the game and couldn't do the post game with you guys. And actually, I will be at the game this Saturday. But depending on reception, maybe I could, barge in live, and give you my quick thoughts.
We'll need to talk about that because I will also be at the game. So I will not be doing the post game show. So I don't know if we're gonna have a post game show if we'll get somebody else.
Or we could do a delayed post game show, maybe
Yeah. It might be a day or two after, but we'll see what happens with the game. Anyway, enough about our post game shows and our schedules. Tim, you will be in State College. I will be in State College for the first ever college football playoff game for Penn State in Beaver Stadium as the 6th seed Nittany Lions take on the 11 seed SMU Mustangs of the ACC. Game is at 12 o'clock on TNT. For you and I, it doesn't matter who's calling the game, but I believe it's the Mark Jones game. So get excited for a lot of random adjectives.
Yeah, it's a TN. Well, yeah, it's ESPN produced, but it's being subletted to TNT.
Yeah.
So I guess the studio is going to be TNT. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see some Ernie Johnson doing a halftime show for those of you watching at home. Hopefully, Charles Barkley's involved somehow too.
Yeah, I can't say if I've looked too far into that, just because, like I said, I will be at the game. So, how surprised are you? Before we get into like the the meat and potatoes of this SMU review, there are a lot of tickets around, and I feel like I talked to so many Penn State fans in my life, and I feel like almost everyone I know is going to the game. Do you feel like that's the case on your end? Because if you look at Ticketmaster or you look at StubHub and all these different places, there are tons of tickets left. Like this. It does not look like it's going to be a sellout from everything that's out there.
I haven't looked at how many tickets were. I jumped on them as soon as they were announced. The game was announced basically because I wasn't sure. I figured they could potentially sell out, but it'll still be a pretty good crowd. Don't get it twisted. I mean, it's still gonna be I think it's still gonna be a well-attended game. It's still gonna get pretty loud from the Penn State fans. Especially, they're making it a whiteout. But I think part of the reason why it's they haven't sold out. I mean, it's 4 days before Christmas. I'm sure some people already had, plans, travel plans or other, family plans, whatever, which just couldn't swing getting to Happy Valley for the game. Or, some really, I don't know what the prices are now. Maybe some people just didn't want to pay for how much it costs. And also, I think they could be thinking, some of these people not going could also be thinking, well, let's see. I think Penn State will, they're the favorite. If they win this game as I think they should, then maybe we'll get tickets for the quarterfinal against Boise State on New Year's Eve. That could be the thinking as well. So, there's multiple factors. But that being said, I still expect a pretty sizable crowd and a pretty energetic, enthusiastic crowd. I mean, after all, this is history in the making, the first ever college football playoff game at Beaver Stadium. So I know you and I are looking forward to it very much. My understanding is it won't be Penn State that actually handles the in-game music. It'll be college football playoff.
I don't believe that's actually the case. So my understanding is that the only thing that's different is SMU will be given a pregame entrance video. But other than that, Penn State does control it. I'm like 90% sure that was so much of the reporting for whether it was student tickets. Did students sell out or didn't they sell out? How many student tickets were available? Just all these different things. It seems like communication has not been very clear between Penn State, the college football playoff, and the people reporting on this stuff. So I do believe that, yeah, people kind of jump the gun on like who is presenting the game. I do think that Penn State is in control of the music and right if they want to play Mo Bamba or stuff like that. Not that I saw a lot of people freaking out about that. It's like, so we don't have to hear like what's the song they always play during reviews? Tell me something good. Like, oh no, what a nightmare. We don't have to hear that song for the 1,000th time. So but I do
you'll get your fourth quarter Sweet Caroline still, folks.
I'm pro Sweet Caroline. I don't mind that, but I certainly during a review as you're sitting there, I don't need to hear "Tell me something good." Tell me that you love me. Are you wearing white? Because I don't have. I'll be honest with you, Tim. I don't have a lot of white Penn State clothing. Weirdly enough, almost everything I own is like gray or blue or navy. It is going to be 27 degrees at kickoff. It is going to be windy as well, and that's something that we can talk about as we get into the preview of the game itself. But at 1:45, it's 12-mile-per-hour winds that with gusts up to 29 miles per hour. I don't know what color your winter coat is, but are you planning to wear your winter coat, or are you going white?
I will definitely be rocking. I'm sure I'll be wearing some kind of winter, some kind of like heavy duty coat, which is not white, but I do have like a white Penn State hoodie, which I wear this. I wear it also to the Palestra basketball game because it always ends up being a whiteout. So, but I'll be wearing that. I'll be wearing like, so as I meant, as an avid runner, I got a bunch of like base layers for wintertime running because I run year round, and so I'll have like a nice warm base layer and a shirt on top of that, and then probably my white hoodie on top of that, and then also I'll probably have my winter coat over that, and then I do have a white Penn State logoed winter hat, so I'll be wearing that. At least something white will be sticking out of me. So okay. I do count that as helping with the whiteout, even if
I'm struggling with wearing white because I don't have a lot of white clothing to begin with. Like I have like long sleeves and t-shirts, but no sweatshirts that are white, and just how cold it's gonna be. Not that I usually
get a white cap.
Maybe. Anyway, just looking forward to it. Looking forward to what this crowd is like. Looking forward to how the whiteout looks. Hey, we asked for some cold weather, and we are certainly getting it. So, Tim, let's jump into the football game itself. Once again, Penn State taking on SMU, the 11-2 SMU Mustangs of the ACC. Why are they in the ACC and like not the Big 12? Nobody knows. It doesn't make any sense. But they're in the ACC.
Alignment for you, man.
Yeah, they make it in by the skin of their teeth after losing to Clemson in the ACC championship game. At one point, they were down 24-7. It was looking like they're probably going to get blown out. Do they get in? They mount a comeback, lose on a last-second field goal to Clemson, and they get that last spot over Alabama. But we're not talking about the SEC. We're talking about SMU. So, Tim, just overall thoughts. We'll get into specifics of who SMU is on offense, who SMU is on defense, but just like overall thoughts on SMU as a team. Is it a favorable matchup for Penn State? Is it the more that you look into it concerning? Kind of what are your thoughts as we're 3 or 2 days away from kickoff?
Well, I look at them and there are parts that concern me, but then there's also parts that I think Penn State can really exploit. So I guess we'll start with the parts that concern me. Obviously, their offense is pretty dynamic, led by quarterback Kevin Jennings. He's been pretty solid throwing the ball this year. But he does have a tendency to throw interceptions. He's got 8 of them. He got 22 touchdowns, but 8 of them. He is a capable runner, though. It's not his thing he's not a run first guy, but he's got wheels, and more importantly, he's got the wheels to buy himself time in the pot, or just if he's scrambling around, like if pressure's getting to him, he's good at just scrambling around, buying himself those extra couple of seconds so a receiver can get open and he can feed them the ball. So that's where he can really be dangerous. And I think it's going to be important. I think what I'm looking for, if I see opportunity here, though, is I think Penn State's D line can give their offensive line some problems. They can, if they can generate some pressure on a regular basis, force don't give Jennings, time to, really get away and make something happen. They could potentially, throw their offense out of sync. And also, I was watching. Actually, before we got on, I watched highlights of their game against Duke. It's a game where SMU turned the ball over 6 times. Duke didn't turn it over at all, and yet they still managed to win by a point in overtime. It was more because Duke shot itself in the foot with missed field goals, but that's another story. But I noticed that, if they can Jennings is susceptible to throwing interceptions. He is very aggressive. He likes to take his shots downfield, but it's also an opportunity for Penn State's secondary to potentially make some plays as well. I do think they'll get some, explosive plays because that's just kind of their MO. That's what they do. They're kind of a boomer bust offense from what I gather. They may not rack up a ton of total yardage, but with the amount of points they score, they're really like an explosive off. I mean, they can, one play just, hit the end zone type of offense. So, it's something that, they have to be. They're not a team that you can really rest on your laurels when it comes to playing defense. They're not a team that's trying to methodically march downfield. Like, they're looking for that big play, that quick score, that quick strike. So that's how they roll. And then I'm curious to see how well that does in these weather conditions. SMU certainly hasn't played in conditions like the ones you were just describing. So, and if there's some wind, that can also have an effect on the passing game. Now, that being said, of course, SMU does run the ball too. Brashard Smith's been pretty solid for them this year, and he's another guy that the defense will have to be wary of and account for. So, they do have guys on defense. I do think, though, up front, especially Penn State's, front seven can potentially, especially the D line can cause them some issues.
Gotcha. I think the thing with Kevin Jennings is that, I've seen like Landon Tagwell on Twitter has posted about, SMU's tackles and we also had SMU played against Clemson where they, had some trouble pass blocking and protecting Jennings. I think the key for Penn State and kind of what I think SMU is going to try to do is one, utilize Jennings' legs more. You mentioned that he is, not necessarily a run first guy, but can certainly run. He had 93 rushing attempts for 379 yards. That's 4.1 yards per rush, which is pretty good. It's certainly not the second coming of Michael Vick or something like that, but he's a guy that can tuck and run. I think that he, those numbers aren't too dissimilar from Drew Aller. Aller, I believe, ran for like 280 or so. But I certainly think that Jennings is a better, more capable, competent runner than Aller. So I'm curious if SMU just wasn't put in a whole bunch of, tough situations this year. Clemson being one of the few times that they were really challenged. I do wonder if we see, one of the things we talked about going into the Ohio State game was how, Ohio State had run Will Howard a ton. Is that something that they show? And I almost think that is kind of the case against, for SMU going against Penn State. This is it. It's the playoff. There's no holding back at this point. There's no next game. If you lose, you need to go for it. So do we see more of a running Kevin Jennings when it comes to, Rhett Lashley's a Gus Malzahn guy, so a lot of RPOs, read options, stuff like that. How confident are you in these Penn State linebackers against Kevin Jennings? Because I like Kobe King. Dom DeLuca is better than giving credit for. Tony Rojas, super talented. Battling some injuries, it seems. He's been wearing that shoulder brace this entire season, but it struggled. that's kind of where my pause comes from when it's this Penn State defense versus SMU is one, what happens when Abdul Carter, beats his man so badly but gets pushed upfield, which we saw, a, a decent amount this year. I mean, Abdul Carter's an All-American. It's not, you take that when it happens, but Abdul can get pushed upfield sometimes. Denai can get pushed upfield sometimes. When those things happen, is Jennings going to take the path and just run the ball? And when that happens, will the linebackers be there to make tackles? So where are you at with these Penn State linebackers and holding up against Jennings, whether it's in the passing game or in the running game?
Yeah, I mean, we saw what Oregon was able to do to the linebackers for the passing game. I mean, they were really able to exploit them. So I would think SMU is going to try and do the same. Now, whether they can do that, again, I think it's going to depend on how much time in the pocket Kevin Jennings gets to try and pick apart that middle of the field, to pick on those linebackers. Because again, if that front seven's able to, push around if a D line is able to push around their O line and, try to get force Jennings out of the pocket or have to move around, then, it may not be as easy for them to do so. Yeah, I mean, but if Jennings has time to sit back there, make his reads, and try to pick on I think he can have some success there. As far as the run game, it's been at times they've looked like they've been able to wrap them up, stop any big games from happening. Other times they get they miss a tackle, and and then give up a bigger run play. So I guess we'll see. Of course, excuse me. Again, I do think it's silly, but I do think weather kind of favors Penn State a bit in this. Like, they're used to playing games in the cold and trying to wrap it. And I don't know. There could be a bit of an adjustment period for the SMU players too.
If SMU wins this game, or let's not even say if they win this game, right? Let's say if they score 28 points, where are those points coming from? Is it, passing game? Is it rushing game? Is it broken plays?
It's through the air. It means if they probably lit up Penn State through the air.
Okay.
I mean, essentially that's what Oregon did in a way.
Yeah. SMU is about 50-50 when it comes to run pass. So
they did enough in the run game, of course, to make Penn State have to respect it, and that opens up things for the passing game.
It's just I feel like when you look at their best players, I mean, they had some solid wide receivers: Roderick Daniels, Jordan Hudson, Keyshawn Smith. But really the two guys that make that offense go, Kevin Jennings, and then, as you mentioned before, the running back Brashard Smith. I just curious to see what SMU does, because if they do come out and they do like to run a lot of inside zone with Smith, I don't know how successful they are going to be, just because that is the one of the strength of the Penn State defense. Whether it's Abdul Carter setting the edge, you have Devon J. Thomas rather. Izzard, Zane Durant inside. Teams that try to run and be doing tackles against Penn State generally can't find a lot of success, because even as far as like linebacker play goes, that's Kobe King is at his best when you put him in the box and you try to run straight at him. He's very smart when you try to do that. Very strong, very quick in that sense. And even same with Dom DeLuca. I think that he's strong in the box, and Tony Rojas as well. I think where this Penn State defense could potentially be had, whether it's in the running game or whether it's in the passing game, is getting outside of the tackles. If you can, it's easier said than done when you're having to run around Denai Denison or having to run around Abdul Carter, because if you're running off tackle around Abdul Carter, there's a good chance that that's just going to be a tackle for loss. But I think what SMU is going to want to do, and Brashard Smith being a former receiver himself, I do wonder how many, halfback passes, are not halfback passes, but passes to the halfback we see, even if it's just little out routes and stuff like that. So long-winded way of saying that I don't necessarily think of this as like if SMU has success offensively, where does it come from? I think it's sort of just being creative with getting Brashard Smith the ball, the same way that Penn State's going to have to be creative getting Tyler Warren the ball, and not necessarily like what we think of as the traditional like passing attack, where it's like, oh, you're attacking, 12, 13, 14 yards downfield. I think you mentioned that SMU is explosive, but I don't know how explosive they're going to be able to be against this Penn State defense. So just curious if, having 2 weeks off, having more time to game plan for this, if we see a little bit different, just because it's if SMU just tries to, run the ball down the middle, I don't know how successful they're going to be. But I think that they could find some success if they attack the outsides, because Penn State is a more talented team. SMU does not lack for speed, though. They have some fast guys all over the field. So we'll see in that respect. But you mentioned before Penn State has such an advantage along the defensive line against SMU's offensive tackles. I mentioned Landon Tangwell's videos on Twitter before, and he's predicting, Abdul Carter to go off and Denai Denison to go off and have big days just because SMU's tackles have struggled a bit. But it's a good thing to have. But SMU is here for a reason. So will be interesting to see. How about the SMU defense versus the Penn State offense?
So obviously Penn State, they're going to offensively, they want to get the run game going. That's their MO. But SMU, they have one of the top, I think they're number 4 in the country in rush yards given up. They give up less than 100 per game. Now, caveat there, I'm not sure playing in the ACC how many great rushing offensives
they've
gone up against, and also how good those
maybe Clemson.
Yeah. So this is going to be a whole different beast, I think, they're going up against with Nick Singleton. And plus, this is an offensive line that's really, I think, starting to gel at the right time. Really, like, you saw how Nolan Rucci played against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Like, really seemed like a light came on for him because, he had been having his struggles up until that game. And, he had the game of his career probably there. And that's a good sign. And they were able to, run the ball against a vaunted Oregon front seven. And I'm not saying SMU doesn't have a good front seven, but no one's mistaken them for Oregon either.
Yeah.
And I think, this is a real opportunity for Penn State to try and, kind of assert their will here, try to, force the game on their terms. Like, we want to run the ball and then, okay, of course, Drew's going to throw some darts in the process too. And that's where they can really potentially exploit SMU, because as good as their rush defense is, their pass defense, not so good. It's near the bottom of FBS. So there's I think Tyler Warren, especially, this should be a game where he can go off.
Before you go, I just want to touch on just because we haven't talked since that Oregon game, and kind of deemed, as you're mentioning that, we go back to that preview, and that was like one of the main things that we were saying is that, this Penn State rushing attack hasn't been quite what it should have, or what we were necessarily expecting in the last couple of weeks, right? You have some good games against like Purdue, but what does that mean? And then they come out and they average, what was it, like 8.2 yards per carry? They run for
against Oregon of all teams.
Yeah, which is crazy. And it puts you, or at least it puts me, like on my head of like what to expect, because this SMU defensive line is good, and they're all former, or a lot of them are former Miami guys. Elijah Roberts, DN, 6'4", 295, former Miami guy. Jarrett Harrison Hunt, who was a one-time Penn State target. He was a New York kid. He was a Miami guy. I know they have some of their Miami transfers on their roster as well, and specifically on their defense. So certainly not guys that lack talent, but that was like my main takeaway after that Oregon game. And I don't, you and I literally have not talked, but as far as like for Penn State to lose, that was maybe the best way to lose a game where you just absolutely dominate a really, really good big defensive line. And now going to this SMU game, it's you're respectful. What was that?
It's a real confidence booster, I think, for the offense.
I think you're respectful of what SMU can do. at the point of attack, but it certainly was, a sight to behold for Penn State to be able to run that way. But anyway, continue on with Tyler Warren, who's
But yes, I do think given SMU's issues of stopping this is a game for Tyler Warren to cook receiving. I'm sure they'll be lining him up a lot more in the Bo packages now that Bo Prabula is no longer with the team. But
hold on, one side note real quick. Bo Prabula, I do find it very interesting. I don't know how much, I know you're a solid verbal guy, and I'm sure you listen to some other podcasts, but not solid verbal in particular, but it is kind of funny hearing a lot of these podcasts talk about, Bo had a big role in that offense. He had a big role in that offense. And not to say that he didn't, but it was, 5 or 6 plays a game. And I just know from the Penn State perspective, like, I don't know. I would rather Drew have the ball. I'd rather have Tyler Warren take those snaps. Like, not to say that Penn State won't miss him. And certainly if Drew gets hurt, like, that is,
I mean, look, gotta give Bo his props for keeping Penn State afloat in that Wisconsin game when Drew was hurt. Of course, it did help that Jalen Reed got a pick 6 to put Penn State ahead, which I think that may have had a bit of a calming effect on Bo too, knowing that his job was just to help nurse and gradually increase a lead as opposed to having to play from behind. But he's nonetheless, he did a very admirable job. You definitely credit him in part for beating Wisconsin. So obviously if Drew gets, but to be honest, Pat, even if we're still on the team, like if Drew goes down in a playoff game, Penn State's in trouble anyway.
Yeah, I think so. Like it's, well, I don't want to get too far into this, but I do think that I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State for whatever reason, right? Let's say Drew breaks his foot right now and they're like, Bo, you have to come back, please. And he does come back. I wouldn't be shocked if Penn State with Bo Prabula could beat SMU and beat Boise.
Well, that's true. I mean, maybe I'm thinking more for like the
certainly long term. But anyway, not to get too far into like that discussion, but I just know from like the Penn State fan perspective, like anytime, and the Bo package is probably better than we lead on to. Like even in the Big Ten championship game, right? He had a 20-yard carry.
Well, I mean, that touchdown they scored at USC. They had the Bo package in there.
Yeah, but that was
Drew throws it to Tyler Warren, who initially snapped the ball.
They could have Amari Evans do that though. Like I more so mean like just when he lines up with like Katron or lines up with Singleton and just like does the basic read option. I don't know. I just was never like the biggest fan of it, and I feel like it always kind of, Drew is like anybody else. He's a rhythm player, and I feel like kind of broke up the rhythm of just have Drew out there. He's your captain. He's your leader. Like I feel better when Drew takes a snap and has the ball more times than not. And when it comes to, a 3rd and 2 situation where you want somebody that, is more likely to run it, I would rather just have Tyler Warren there. But I appreciate it. People that, don't follow as closely, being like, this is potentially a big loss. It's like, I don't know. I can't say I'm gonna be sitting there in the stadium at any point being like on 2nd and 6, being like, you know what? I really wish Bill could come in to, run for 2 yards. I'm just not gonna miss that. But anyway, other thoughts on the Penn State offense?
Well, of course, yeah. I think Tyler Warren get involved. I think Trey Wallace has been. I feel like this latter half of the season, he's starting to come onto his own. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a good game himself. Maybe accounts for a touchdown in this one or sets up a touchdown.
Yeah.
And of course, I think obviously, guys like Julian Fleming. I mean, even if he doesn't do much receiving wise, I mean, he throws some pretty good blocks in the run game, and when it comes to downfield blocking. So I think he can potentially. He'll play a role one way or another.
I will just say it does say something about Penn State's wide receivers, where the second one you mentioned is Julian Fleming. You're like, he's a pretty good blocker. It's like when you have like a big man in basketball, and you're like, his picks that he sets are just the most incredible picks you've ever seen. But no, I certainly think that. Well, one, Yes, Trey Wallace is like he's a good Big Ten wide receiver. As far as like SMU's defense goes, that is where they kind of struggle. I still think, like you said, that Penn State's MO is going to be to run the ball and just try to go strength on strength against SMU. But certainly, even with the cold weather and the potential wind gusts of 30 miles per hour, Penn State's going to have to be able to throw the ball. I mean, Cade Klubnik, threw for 262 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was 21 of 41. And,
I would expect another big connection between Drew and Omari Evans, too. I forgot to throw that in there.
Yeah. So, and that was just what I was going to say, that this SMU team, it's kind of where their weakness is at. It is corner. If there is a weakness, it's a very good defense. But for as much as Penn State's going to want to run the ball, and I'm certain that they will, and, they're going to be creative when it comes to getting Tyler Warren the ball. And I don't doubt that he has another, 7 reception type game, probably has 3 carries, things like that. Those wide receivers are going to have to step up. Trey Wallace is going to have to step up. You mentioned Omari Evans. He's a guy that's going to have to step up. That was one of the things that we did talk about in that Oregon preview of like, hey, it would be nice to have like an Omari Evans deep shot. And even though we didn't get like a true deep shot, he did have that touchdown that pulled Penn State down from a 28-10 deficit. So yeah, I'd certainly like to see more of Omari Evans and Trey Wallace, like you said. And yeah, I mean, Julian Fleming's going to be out there just throwing some nasty bucks in the run game. I'm sure Liam Clifford will get some run as well. So, but certainly aligned with you on the Trey Wallace aspect. What are we thinking? Nick Singleton, Katron Allen wise, because Katron Allen just coming back from the dead in that Big Ten championship game, just running guys over, screaming in people's faces, just carrying defenders. I think that a lot of the fan base and myself included was, I don't want to say out on Katron, but we had the discussion of like, should it be more of a 65-35 case between Singleton and Allen? So what are you thinking for this game? Kind of who does, I think more than likely it's going to be 50-50, but who do you think is more important for Penn State to get going? Who do you think is more likely to get going? Singleton?
Oh, you got to get Singleton going. I mean, Katron had a great game against Oregon, and that was really good to see. But a big part of how Penn State was able to keep up was Singleton was ripping off big runs, and of course had that touchdown catch.
I was going to say, so important in the passing game.
That's the thing. Singleton's is also a weapon in the passing game. I mean, so he can do both. Not that Katron hasn't been targeted in the passing game at all, but Singleton's the more lethal weapon as
just
a
little bit more dynamic.
Yeah. But it'll be, definitely expect to see a heavy dose, see both guys out there. And hopefully they can pick up where they left off against Oregon. Obviously not running in a closed dome environment, but still, these guys are, I think, used to playing in cold weather now, having spent a few years in Happy Valley. So I think, as long as, if the O-line just continues to do its thing that it did, the Big Ten championship game, I think, I think it could be another good afternoon for Singleton and Allen. So, I mean, I think Penn State they can put up their share of points. They can put up some points. I think enough to, stave off whatever, whatever flurry of points SMU might be capable of doing.
So let's get right into it then. So you mentioned points scored and things like that. What is your score prediction? I mean, it sounds like that you are thinking like most people that Penn State's going to win this one, but what are we thinking score wise?
I'm saying 35-24 Penn State. I do think I think it's a little higher scoring than you might think, especially given the condition. But I do think SMU, they can. I think early on, especially they'll get their share of. I wouldn't be surprised if they jump out to an early lead while Tom Allen is adjusting to to their style. But I do think Penn State's offense will be able to answer the call. They'll be able to make plays of their own. I just think, and really to me also, I'm looking at the battle in the trenches on both sides. I think Penn State has superior offensive and defensive lines. And I think over the course of 4 quarters, they're going to they're going to wear SMU's lines down. And that's going to, on offense, it's going to lead to bigger gains on the ground and even more time for Drew to pick apart a leaky pass defense of SMU's. And then on, defensive side, it's just, chance to get some pressure and sacks on Jennings and, and also just to force him to make some hurried throws, which could, lead to potential interceptions, or maybe if they can even get to him, get him sacked, maybe they can strip the ball away, get a fumble recovery. So I think there's going to be opportunities abound for Penn State. And I think, being at home with the crowd behind them, with weather conditions that they're a little more used to than their opponent, I just think all that factors into what ultimately should be a Penn State win.
I agree. I don't know how far I want to go with this. I think that it's going to be like a comfortable victory, which I hate doing. And basically anytime that I predict it, comfortable victory, Penn State is stupid idiots and they don't win comfortably. And then when I predict them like against Washington, say it's going to be, a closer game, Penn State just blows them out. But I just think that one, like this weather thing, like it is absolutely a factor. It is absolutely a factor. It's the same way, like for, you live in DC, so you get a little bit warmer weather. I'm outside of Philly, so it's ever so slightly colder, but right, basically the same.
They're similar climates, I think. I've been to Philly a bunch of times.
And you're originally from State College, so I'm certainly not trying to downplay you as far as weather goes, but just like it's like that first sub 38 degree day, like when you wake up and it's like 29 degrees and you're walking out to your car, like just as a person that takes a toll on you when you're going in to play a football game. And I know SMU is going to be fired up, and like as far as like who has more pressure, like yeah, it is probably Penn State, let's be honest, but I do feel like SMU, just kind of how they got in there, the fact that they, you lose the ACC championship, you do barely get in. But I think it was something that was somewhat, I don't want to say expected, but with how they lost, they probably like it's not like we have new life type of thing. It was more like, okay, we got our spot. And just for SMU being a team that was in the AAC last year, switch over to the ACC, they go 11-2, they almost win the title. I don't want to say that like they're already winners, but it's like, what are they really gaining out of this, as opposed to Penn State with and perhaps the same argument can be made Penn State wise, right? Penn State's never made the playoff. They finally make the playoff. The pressure gets to them. Like who knows? I just think that this Penn State team is different, and how we saw them against Oregon, like really told me what I needed to like see from them as far as, getting to the Big Ten championship, getting absolutely, I mean, you talk about getting punched in your mouth. They got jabbed, they got hooked, they got uppercut, they got Oregon threw everything at them in those first 20 minutes. And Penn State still got up, cleaned themselves off and started throwing punches themselves and made that a game where they were, 47 yards or whatever away from being a 2-point conversion away from tying the game. So I just don't think that there's one quit in Penn State. And I think it's a team that like really believes in itself and is going to overcome, any potential slow starts or anything like that. So I lean towards this being like a blowout, to be honest with you. Whatever someone considers a blowout, that's up to their interpretation. I think it's still an 8.5-point spread, I believe. I have Penn State 35. What was that?
Okay. I was about to ask you the score.
Yeah, Penn State 35, SMU 17. So I'm not too far off from you. I think you had 35-24. So I'm just
we both have Penn State hitting the 35. I think we both seem to agree that Penn State's offense should be able to cook.
Yeah, I just think that. Just give me a second. Just bringing up SMU's schedule here. Nevada, Houston Christian, BYU, TCU, Florida State. The only away game of that was Nevada, by the way. At Louisville, tough place to play. At Stanford, at Duke, they go to overtime. Home against Pittsburgh, undefeated Pittsburgh at the time. Pittsburgh ended up not winning a game then the rest of the way and are now playing Toledo in the Who Cares Bowl. So congrats to the Pitt fans on that. Remember when they were all talking about, Penn State Pitt in the playoff? Well, you got Toledo instead, and who knows what bowl that's called. Anywho, Boston College at Virginia, Cal, and then Clemson. I just think that Penn State is a different level than almost all those teams. Like Clemson, solid. Louisville, solid. I just think you going to Beaver Stadium in this playoff atmosphere, yes, maybe it's not like a full 110,000 sellout with everyone in white, but the 102,000 people that are going to be there are going to be fired up and are going to be loud. It's not going to be a fair weather type atmosphere. So I just think there's a lot of things going against SMU. I just don't know if they quite have the guys right now. It's a program that's on the rise, though, for sure. They have good NIL. Rhett Lashley's a hell of a coach. I would not be opposed to him. We'll see. I mean, I want James Franklin to stay, but Rhett Lashley be high on my list as far as, come to Penn State. So I think that
he could be in line for the Auburn job if Hugh Freeze doesn't pan out.
Arkansas as well. He's an Arkansas native, but I think SMU is a team program on the rise. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time that they're in the playoff, but I just think that there's too much going for Penn State right now with, Drew, his mindset coming back, Andy Kotelnicki coming back. I just don't think that there's that many distractions. And if the biggest distraction that you have is your backup quarterback entering the portal, I think you're okay. Penn State's relatively healthy, all things considered, right? There's nobody from that Oregon game that is now, that was playing and is now out. At least I don't think. We did have a practice update tonight, but it seemed like everyone's accounted for. So yeah, I lean towards this being a blowout. I think that Penn State's kind of just able to do what they need to do. Maybe not like a Washington type blowout where, right, Penn State was up 28-0 at half, but I think it's one that, maybe they're up, 21-7 at halftime and they're able to just extend the lead in the second half. So yeah, I have Penn State winning. And I'll tell you what, Tim, I will tell you freaking what. If Penn State loses, I'm going to lose my freaking mind. You and I haven't talked about this, so let me do my diatribe. You get SMU, the 11 seed. You get Boise State as a 3 seed instead of getting, Indiana or Tennessee or, Georgia or Ole Miss or Alabama or any of these teams. You could not have drawn up. I'm not trying to discredit SMU and Boise, but you cannot have drawn up what was a year ago an AAC team and a Mountain West team as your 2 spots to get into the the Final Four or whatever.
Well, Boise's still a Mountain West team.
Yeah. I just meant the AAC part. A year ago an ACC team and now, but still a Mountain West team. I cannot live in a world where I have to walk out of Beaver Stadium on Saturday and Penn State loses. I will not accept that.
I think there's gonna be bigger problems than that if that happens.
People thought that James Franklin after had a state game, fans turn on him then. That's gonna look like a freaking picnic compared to what Beaver Stadium will look like if he loses to SMU.
Well, because the difference, this is a game Penn State's expected to win. 8.5 point favorite.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is a team that just a year ago was a Group of 5 school, and now they're a Power 4 school. And credit to them, they've made the transition quite well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's still elements of that. There's still some G5 elements to that program right now. That'll change over time, but that is bottom line. This is a game Penn State, should win, just given the talent and also just the intangibles. It's in State College. It's right before Christmas. Temps are. You're talking, that's about your typical December weather there, 20s,
got what we asked for.
Wind chill in the teens.
Just imagine.
Flurries, I don't know.
Imagine after that Ohio State game, be like, hey, Penn State's going to get the 6th seed. You're going to get a home playoff game against a 2-loss SMU that in 27-degree weather, and then you're going to go to the Fiesta Bowl, a place that Penn State has never lost, by the way. Not that actually matters, but as far as college football magic and juju, and you get Boise State instead of getting, a one-loss Miami or an undefeated Miami, I guess, at the time.
Right.
Like, Penn State's thing cannot be that we can't beat Ohio State or Michigan or teams that are favored to beat us. But if we are the favorites, we beat you, and then go and lay an egg against SMU, especially. I mean, we'll talk about Boise when it gets to Boise, but this is just, the path of all paths. Who knows how long this lasts as well, because I think that we get one more year of this weird, wonky 12-teamer where the top 4 seeds are conference champions. And I think once they change the 14 in 2 years, that they will get rid of that, because there's just no – I know the bye is nice, but every team had a bye, Tim. That is just something that I'm not quite understanding. Every team has a bye. The whole idea of, you get a bye is that the other teams had to play. Everyone has a bye. They just get 2 byes, which, okay, sure, nice. But, yeah, it's good to play one last game. But I'm sorry. I just flat out do not believe that if you gave Oregon some truth serum right now, they would rather have the bye and play potentially Ohio State as opposed to getting SMU at home and then playing Boise State in Arizona. But there's something else I wanted to mention. I don't remember what it was, though. I was just going to say, you just never know when you're going to get back. And I think things are trending pretty well for Penn State in 2025. Drew's coming back, and Nicole Nicky's coming back. We'll see what happens with Nick Singleton, Denida Sun, and what's going on in the transfer portal. I don't know if Penn State's ever
going to. The time is now. This is their time. I mean, the path is clear. I mean, look, SMU, assuming you win this, let's be positive here, and let's assume they take care of business like they have been as a favorite since the start of 2022 season. They do that. You get Boise, which I think they'll be a double-digit favorite against on a neutral site.
Somewhere around there, for sure.
Yeah. And, not to disrespect Boise, Ashton Genty, certainly you can make a case to deserve the Heisman Trophy, but that is a team that Penn State should be able to handle without a whole lot of trouble, So the path to the semi – now, of course, who knows? Semifinals, they'll draw. We'll see. Could be drawn Georgia, or it could be, whoever wins Notre Dame, Indiana.
I'm not even going to complain about that, though.
No,
but even
that's also another win. That'd be another we'll call it a fit. Call it a 50-50 toss game. So there's a chance. You win that. Guess what? You're playing for the national championship against. Well, who knows? I guess we'll say maybe Oregon, or could be even Ohio State or Texas. Who knows? But the path to having a shot at the Natty could not be more clear, like you've said. So, I mean, this is a time to strike. You don't know when you're going to get it, when the stars and moons are going to align like this for you with I don't want to say easy, but with a very doable path.
As favorable as one team has.
Yes, as favorable as you could possibly ask for if you're Penn State. So, this is it. This is James Franklin's time to get it done.
Yeah. No, it needs to happen. I feel like that's good for final thoughts. I feel like that's probably what we should have led the podcast with, or the YouTube show. I don't know if this is considered a podcast because it's only on YouTube, but it's probably what we should have led with. Be like, hey, they need to friggin' win this thing. Look at this path. But yeah. All right. We'll figure out what we're doing post game show wise. My gut is going to tell. I think almost all of the BSD guys are going to be busy in some respect. So it'll likely be me and Tim at a later point.
Maybe we could do it in the. I don't know what we could do it that evening, or
we'll figure something out. Either way, we'll have some sort of post game show at some point. So
we'll do something.
Yeah, we'll keep you guys posted. Hopefully it's gonna be a post game / preview show for Boise, but we'll see. We will see. So make sure you're liking the videos. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel as always, and reading our stuff on BlackStreetDiaries.com. Thank you guys once again for watching, and we will see you the next time we see you.